Breaking news out of North America, tensions between Canada and the United States have reached a boiling point. In a historic move that marks a dramatic shift in Canadian foreign policy, Prime Minister Mark Carney has issued a bold and unapologetic response to President Donald Trump's aggressive reintroduction of trade tariffs. Canada is now threatening a sweeping $60 billion retaliation package, with the potential to scale up to $110 billion. This isn't just a standoff between two neighbors. This escalating trade war could send ripples across global supply chains and redefine the geopolitical landscape of the 21st century. To understand how we arrived at this critical moment, we must look at the recent political transformation in Canada. Mark Carney's rise to power has been nothing short of remarkable. Formerly the governor of the Bank of Canada and later the Bank of England, Carney was known internationally as a calm, pragmatic figure, especially during the 2008 financial crisis and Brexit uncertainty. But his foray into politics has revealed a tougher side. Carney's campaign centered around economic sovereignty, green industrialization, and a new vision of Canada as a geopolitical heavyweight, not a diplomatic afterthought. His victory in the 2024 federal election came on a wave of frustration with foreign interference and growing anxiety over Canada's economic vulnerability in a changing world. Carney's posture is fundamentally reshaping Canada's role on the world stage. He has rejected what he calls decades of quiet diplomacy, advocating instead for a muscular foreign policy that meets force with force, especially when it comes to trade. At the heart of this transformation is a direct challenge to President Trump's America First agenda. The message from Ottawa is clear. Canada will no longer allow itself to be economically blackmailed by its closest ally. Canada won't be bullied, Carney declared during a recent press conference, his tone uncharacteristically fierce. And this isn't political theater, policy is already backing up the rhetoric. The origins of this most recent dispute stretch back to Trump's first term, when he imposed tariffs on foreign steel, aluminum, and auto imports, citing national security concerns under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. Canada, despite being a long-standing defense ally and the U.S.'s largest trading partner, was not spared. In 2018, Trump slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and 10% on aluminum. That move cost Canadian producers over $2 billion in the first year alone, and triggered retaliatory measures from Ottawa on U.S. goods ranging from whiskey to washing machines. Fast forward to 2025 and history is repeating itself. Only this time, the stakes are much higher. Trump's second term began with a series of executive orders reinstating and expanding tariffs under the same national security rationale, targeting not just metals but now Canadian auto parts and even some energy products. His administration claims the goal is to reshore American industry and defend against trade abuse, but critics argue it's part of a broader strategy to pressure allies into asymmetric deals. In response, Canada launched a $30 billion counter-tariff package in early March, but by April, Carney announced that retaliatory measures could double, or even triple, if the U.S. escalates further. That means up to $110 billion in Canadian tariffs are on the table, making it the most aggressive trade retaliation in Canada's modern history. These tariffs target politically sensitive U.S. exports, including agricultural goods, electronics, and fossil fuels. The aim is surgical disruption, hit U.S. industries where it hurts most, and increase the domestic political cost of continuing the dispute. Let's break down the sectors bearing the brunt of this conflict. The steel and aluminum industries have already seen significant disruptions. In Quebec and Ontario, several plants have temporarily shut down or slowed production due to uncertainty in export demand. According to the Canadian Steel Producers Association, over 4,000 jobs are now at risk. South of the border, the American Iron and Steel Institute has reported that domestic prices have spiked nearly 12% since the latest round of tariffs were announced. The automotive sector is also deeply entangled. Modern vehicle manufacturing is a cross-border process. A single car part might cross the Canada-US border 6 or 7 times before ending up in a finished vehicle. Now, with tariffs applied to both raw materials and components, production costs have surged. General Motors and Ford have both issued earnings warnings, citing increased input prices and parts delays. GM estimated that the tariffs could cost the company over $5 billion in 2025 alone. The energy sector, however, is where Canada may hold its strongest hand. As the fourth largest producer of oil and natural gas in the world, Canada exports roughly 3.8 million barrels of crude oil per day to the United States, more than 60% of total U.S. oil imports. Natural gas exports to the U.S. hit 2.5 trillion cubic feet in 2024, and demand continues to grow as the U.S. phases out coal. Carney has signaled that while Canada does not wish to politicize energy, it reserves the right to redirect resources to more stable trade partners. That's no empty threat. Already, Canadian officials have initiated exploratory talks with South Korea, Japan, and Germany about redirecting energy exports, especially liquefied natural gas (LNG). The political fallout has been just as intense. In Canada, public opinion has shifted sharply in favor of Carney's hardline stance. A recent Angus Reid poll found that 72% of Canadians support increased trade retaliation if the United States does not remove the tariffs, and only 19% believe that diplomatic negotiation alone will work. The phrase "enough is enough" has become a political rallying cry across the political spectrum. Even historically cautious parties like the Liberal and Conservative opposition have voiced support for Carney's trade measures. In the U.S., however, the political calculus is more complicated. Trump's base in industrial swing states like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania may support the tariffs in principle, but the economic pain is becoming harder to ignore. Farmers have been particularly vocal, as retaliatory Canadian tariffs have reduced demand for U.S. corn, soybeans, and beef. The National Corn Growers Association estimates that American corn exports to Canada have fallen by 17% year over year, and storage facilities in the Midwest are nearing capacity due to oversupply. Facing increasing uncertainty, Canada is also proactively diversifying its trade partnerships. The federal government has announced a $5 billion annual investment to expand exports into the European Union, South Korea, and Southeast Asia through infrastructure, logistics, and marketing support. This plan, called the Global Pivot, is modeled in part on Australia's post-China trade diversification strategy. Early indicators are promising. In the first quarter of 2025, Canadian exports to the EU grew by 14%, with Germany, France, and the Netherlands leading the way. Additionally, Canada has finalized a comprehensive trade agreement with ASEAN nations, opening up access to a combined market of 680 million consumers. But diversification is not without its challenges. Competing in Asian markets often means adjusting to vastly different regulatory environments, and Canadian exporters face stiff competition from established players like Japan and Australia. There's also the question of infrastructure. Canada's Pacific coast ports are congested, and inland rail capacity is stretched thin. Still, policymakers see these hurdles as manageable, and far preferable to dependency on an increasingly erratic U.S.